And so this is an excerpt from my journal. Tara, Eli, and I, Tara at this point is about 3.5, and my son is about 2. Tara, Eli, and I are walking back from our neighbor Mrs. Starr's house through the woods, a way we have never come before. We cross over a little stream, and I say that the big puddles in our backyard go through a pipe under our driveway and come down to this stream. Tara asks where it goes then. Well, I say it goes down near our friend Solvay's house, and then into a big stream down a river, and after a long trip into the ocean. And then it becomes clouds and rain, and it falls into our backyard and goes down and around again, I say. Tara says, around and around? I say, yes, just like that, around and around. She says, like a ring? And I'm not sure whether she means ring around the rosy or a ring on your finger, but in any case, I figure either one of them is fine. And I said, yes, let's call it the water ring. So that, me trying to take her references and then use them to explain this slightly larger concept that we're trying to establish. So she smiles, and I could see that the idea appealed to her. So that evening, at bedtime, we were looking at a book called Island Boy by Barbara Cooney. Now, this was a book, I had never read this book before, and it was too long, and it was kind of too complicated for her, so we just kind of skimmed through the story. And it's about a boy who grows up on a Maine island, becomes an adult, moves away, comes back in his advanced years, and in the end he dies and is buried on the island. And everyone comes to his funeral. And I had not anticipated that this was going to be a book about death. And so we kind of looked through the book, and Tara says, what happens after he dies? And I didn't have a pre-made answer, so I said, well, his body goes back into the earth to make new soil, and his spirit goes up into the sky to get ready to come back again. And she said, like the water ring? And I said, just like that. And so it was wonderful to see this kind of construction of concepts from her kind of tangible experience with water and rings, and then creating this idea of the water ring, and then the water ring starting to explain a kind of reincarnation. And reincarnation, to me, had always felt kind of like an intriguing philosophical concept, but not anything I could really kind of feel to be true. And as soon as she analogized it to the water cycle, it felt much more accessible to me. So it was one of those great things of me kind of learning along with her kind of thinking development. There's a theme throughout the movie of balancing risk and benefit. We've gotten so much into only looking at risk and deciding that everything is not okay, because there's some element of risk in it, and we have to get into this mindset of balancing risk versus benefit. And so there's that great scene of the kids scrambling around on the rocks, down by the creek, and one of the little kids, Louie, that's not a good idea, right? And so this is an incident that happened when my son was around 9 years old. And he and I had been out, we had started to burn brush in the afternoon, and it was early December. So we had started burning brush, and then he had disappeared for about 2 or 3 hours. And then he showed up later on. It was one of those situations where I didn't know where he was. A friend of his had come over, and they had kind of disappeared. He came back, and we're standing around the fire, and there's a moon rising, and it's one of those really kind of pristine moments. And he starts to describe what he did that day, and he says, Daddy, I found a whole new part of the neighborhood today. I've lived here 9 years, and it's amazing that I never found this place. I found a bunch of pine trees growing all close together, 9 different groups of little pine trees. And we picked one group out, and then we climbed all the trees in that group, about 7 or 8. And you know how at the beginning the trunk is smooth, and then there's a bunch of branches coming out, and then it's flat again, and then another bunch of branches. He's talking about the whorls of branches on a pine tree. He says, we climbed up in one tree, and Yashka and I laid back on the 7th bunch of branches, and we rested. And I shut my eyes, and I felt like I was going to fall asleep, but I didn't, and I was daydreaming. about little pathways and walkways through the trees. Like in the Star Wars movie where the Ewoks have that little village all up in the trees with suspended bridges connecting the houses together. Remember that part?
Yeah.
That was the best part of the Star Wars movies, I thought, that little village up in the trees. And he says, or the way squirrels make a pathway from one tree to the next. Well, then I woke up and thought, hey, that's not just a dream. Maybe I can do that right here. So I tried it. So first, you get up on one of the tall trees and then you walk out on one of the long branches. And then you hop onto a long branch of another tree, right? And we were up there about 10 feet off the ground, and we could zigzag from one tree to another tree to another tree, until on the last tree I felt like king of the mountain. And then I sat down on one of the branches and slid down, bump, 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 on each set of branches until I hit the ground. It was so much fun. Now, my inner reaction was to say, oh my God! you shouldn't be doing that. You should have a parent doing that. Don't you realize it? And I really consciously, in that situation and lots of other situations all along the way, tried to restrain that knee-jerk reaction of no, you can't do that, or no, you shouldn't do that, because I really wanted to support that kind of exploration. I still am in that same, he's 22 right now, I'm still in that same situation with him. You know, I had to accept that the benefits of that kind of exploration were greater than the risks, and he was there, he was fine, he hadn't gotten hurt. And then he said, and we kind of put some more branches on the fire and moved the coals around, and then he said, and this I think suggests what the benefit of those kinds of experiences for kids are. He said, up until now, I didn't feel comfortable exploring the neighborhood because it felt like I was going to get lost. And now I want to know the whole neighborhood really well so that I can make a perfect map of it. I want to know it just as well as I know all the houses along the road. I'm a good explorer because I really look at all the details, all the little places you can go, all the crannies you can find. I don't just look at it and go. I spend a lot of time on it, make forts and stuff and traps. And so it's that kind of sense of kind of his wanting to deeply understand his landscape and its nooks and crannies that I think is the value of letting kids go. And so it provides the opportunity for you to feel rooted in the natural world. Just like the way the language development stuff, roots language in the world, this is kind of rooting kids' bodies in the world. In trying to analyze what it is that actually conveys the parental values to children, there's a lot of focus now on what's referred to as focused attention. In other words, in the parent-child interaction, the virtue is in the focused attention. So what the parent gets the child to focus on, or what they focus on together, appears to be, it's that action of focused attention that appears to be making some difference. So that's what you're
Meaning the value, the child takes that value.
The value kind of takes that value in when there's some kind of intentional focused attention where the adult focuses the joint attention on the one star or the moon rising or the flower unfurling. So it's focused attention is a virtue.